Namaste, Bitya. Hamesha khush raho, Bitya. A very good morning to you all. Myself, JVN Dr. Ravi Jain, Assistant Professor, Department of Practice of Medicine, and Faculty of Homeopathic Science at Jyoti Vidyapith Women's University, Jaipur. In this series of lectures, we have been discussing about the various diseases related to the thyroid gland. And in today's lecture, we are going to discuss about multinodular goiter. In the last lectures, we have discussed about the various conditions, like we have discussed about hypothyroidism, we have discussed about thyrotoxicosis, we have discussed about thyroiditis, different type of thyroiditis, and in the last lecture, we have discussed about the diffused non-toxic goiter. Today, we are going to discuss about another important disease, that is toxic multinodular goiter or the multinodular goiter. So we are going to discuss about the multinodular goiter. In the last lecture, we have discussed about the diffuse non-toxic goiter. And today we are going to discuss about the multinodular goiter. If nodules are formed in the goiter, then what are the different types of nodular goiter, and what are the various pathogenesis, clinical features, investigations, and management of the toxic of the multinodular goiter. So multinodular goiter can be of two types. It can be toxic and it can be non-toxic. So all these varieties we are going to discuss in today's lecture. So when we are observing multiple nodules in the goiter, then it will be called as the multinodular goiter. So nodule formation will represent a case of multinodular goiter, and this can be checked by palpation. Multinodular goiter can be of two types. We can have non-toxic multinodular goiter and it can be toxic multinodular goiter. So we are going to discuss both the conditions one by one. So what is non-toxic multinodular goiter and what is toxic multinodular goiter? We are going to discuss in today's lecture. First of all, what is non-toxic multinodular goiter? Non-toxic multinodular goiter, it occurs in around 12% of the adults. So it is more common in women than in men. As we have seen about the diffuse non-toxic goiter, it was also common in the women. In the similar way, non-toxic multinodular goiter is also common in the women than in men. The pathogenesis includes multiple genetic, autoimmune, and environmental influences. So the non-toxic multinodular goiter occurs because of the multiple genetic factors, autoimmune factors, and the environmental influences. So we can have this toxic non-toxic multinodular goiter that can be because of the multiple genetic factors, autoimmune factors, and the environmental factors. So there are different factors responsible for development of the non-toxic multinodular goiter. Genetic factors are there, environmental factors are there, and autoimmune factors are there. What are the factors? Genetic factors, environmental factors, and autoimmune factors that are responsible for the development of the non-toxic multinodular goiter. Non-toxic means there is not non-production, excessive production of the T3 and T4. Toxicity here is related to the production of the thyroid hormone. So whenever we are talking about the thyrotoxicosis, that means there is excessive production of T3 and T4 and suppression of the TSH. But here we are talking about non-toxic goiter, means there will be no excessive production of the T3 and T4. So there are various factors which includes genetic factors, autoimmune factors, and the environmental factors that are responsible for the non-toxic multinodular goiter. Now, histology. Histology means when we are observing the cells under the microscope, it will reveal hypercellular regions to the cystic areas that is filled with colloid. So in the histology, we are going to observe the hypercellular regions to cystic areas that are filled with the colloid. The fibrosis is often extensive. So we can also observe fibrosis in this disease condition, and the fibrosis is usually extensive, and there are areas of the hemorrhage or lymphocytic infiltration may be seen. So histology will reveal hypercellular areas to the cystic areas filled with the colloid. There will be fibrosis, extensive fibrosis can be seen, and the areas of hemorrhage or lymphocytic infiltration may be seen. The TSH is usually not elevated. So what we can see in case of toxic multinodular goiter, it is occurring in around 12% of the adults, more common in women, and occurring due to the various factors which include genetic factors, environmental factors, and autoimmune factors. The histological examination reveals hypercellular region to cystic areas that are filled with colloid. with fibrosis that is extensive and the areas of hemorrhage or lymphocytic infiltration that may be seen. The TSH is not usually elevated. Now, what are the clinical features of non-toxic multinodular goiter? Whenever a case of non-toxic multinodular goiter is coming to us, what are the clinical features with which the patient can present to us? The clinical manifestation, it can be asymptomatic or euthyroid. So because this is a non-toxic goiter, therefore the symptoms will not be usually present, but because it is multinodular goiter, hence we are going to observe multiple nodules in the thyroid gland. So the clinical manifestations can be asymptomatic and euthyroid. It develops over many years. So there is development of the non-toxic multinodular goiter over many years, and it is detected in the routine physical examination. So whenever you are doing the routine physical examination, we are going to observe the multiple nodules in the thyroid gland. When the individual notices the enlargement of the neck. So normally the patient observe the neck and observe that there is enlargement of the neck. If the goiter is large enough, it can lead to compressive symptoms. This we have already understood that as the size of the thyroid gland enlarges, then it will produce certain type of the compression symptoms. So compressive symptoms includes difficulty in swallowing, that is dysphagia, respiratory distress because of the compression of the trachea, and there can be venous plethora, that is venous congestion that we have seen as a Pemberton sign. But these symptoms are uncommon. So in case of normal enlargement of the thyroid gland, we can see the symptoms with difficulty of swallowing. There can be respiratory distress because of the tracheal compression and the venous plethora because of the congestion of the veins. But these symptoms are usually uncommon, and there is sudden pain in the multinodular goiter that is caused by the hemorrhage into the nodule. So if you are observing multiple nodules and they are producing severe pain, then the severe pain can be due to the hemorrhage, sudden hemorrhage that is occurring in the nodule. And you can also see hoarseness in the voice that is reflecting the laryngeal nerve involvement. So that if there is hoarseness in the voice, then it means the recurrent laryngeal nerve is getting compressed, and it can also suggest the malignancy. Now, how can we diagnose a case of non-toxic multinodular goiter? So the diagnosis of the case of non-toxic multinodular goiter, it includes the thyroid architecture. So on physical examination, we will observe that the thyroid architecture is distorted and there are multiple nodules of varying size are appreciated. So the normal architecture is getting destroyed. There are multiple nodules because, as the name suggests, multinodular goiter. So you are going to observe multiple nodules of the varying size. The Pemberton sign that we have discussed in the previous lecture, Pemberton sign that is causing a cork effect. And it is characterized by the facial suffusion when the patient's arms are raised above the head. And it suggests that the goiter has increased pressure on the thoracic inlet. So thyroid architecture will be distorted. There will be appearance of multiple nodules. The Pemberton sign will be positive when the patient is asked to raise the hands, and the thyroid will produce a cork effect in the thoracic inlet, and there will be venous plethora or the plethora of the face. The TSH levels will be done to exclude the subclinical hyper or hypothyroidism phase. The thyroid functions in this particular disease condition is usually normal. The tracheal deviation is usually common because of the enlarged thyroid gland, and compression, it is characteristically causes inspiratory stridor. So if there is compression of the trachea, then it will produce inspiratory stridor. The CT and the MRI can be done to evaluate the anatomy of the goiter. So CT and MRI can be done to evaluate the anatomy of the goiter and the extent of substernal extension or tracheal narrowing. So CT or MRI can be done, and these can be done to evaluate the anatomy of the goiter and extent of substernal extension or the tracheal narrowing. The barium swallow will reveal the extent of esophageal compression. So if the thyroid is causing any sort of esophageal compression that is producing dysphagia, then barium swallow can be done to assess for the compression. Ultrasonography can be done to identify which nodule should be biopsied based on the sonographic features. So ultrasonography is usually done to check for the biopsy, which nodule can be biopsied for the diagnosis. So in the diagnosis, we are seeing the thyroid architecture is distorted with multiple nodules of various sizes. Pemberton sign usually positive. TSH levels to exclude the other disease condition, which includes subclinical hyper or hypothyroid phase. Tracheal deviation is common. Compression of the trachea produces inspiratory stridor. CT and MRI can be done to check for the anatomy of the thyroid gland. barium swallow to check for the esophageal compression, and ultrasonography for checking which nodule to be biopsied. Now the treatment of the diffuse non-toxic multinodular goiter. So for the treatment of non-toxic multinodular goiter, dosage of iodine 131 radioiodine therapy can be given. It can be used with increased frequency because it can decrease the goiter size. So ablation by iodine 131 that will reduce the size of the goiter and may selectively ablate the regions of autonomy. And in acute compression, glucocorticoid treatment can be given, and also surgical resection of the gland for removal of the compression symptoms. So in the treatment of non-toxic multinodular goiter, we can give iodine 131 therapy for destruction of the gland to reduce the size and to ablate the areas of the autonomy. Autonomy means those that are producing the hormones on their own. And acute compression, in case of acute compression, glucocorticoids and the surgery can be done. So this was about the non-toxic goiter, non-toxic multinodular goiter. Now we come to the condition of the toxic multinodular goiter. There's another condition when there is toxicity. Toxicity means excessive production of the T3 and T4 hormone. So what happens in the toxic multinodular goiter? There is presence of the functional autonomy is the cause. So functional autonomy means the gland is producing on by itself the thyroid hormone, and the molecular basis of autonomy remains unknown. So there is autonomy of the thyroid gland, but what is causing autonomy is not known. So toxic multinodular goiter means we are getting multiple nodules of the thyroid gland with excessive production of the T3 and T4. So the genetic abnormalities are known to confer functional autonomy, such as activation of the TSHR. The clinical features of toxic multinodular goiter includes the subclinical hyperthyroidism and mild thyrotoxicosis. So it is known as toxic because there is excessive production of T3 and T4. So the clinical features include the subclinical hyperthyroidism. There can be raised level of T3 and T4 without much symptoms, or it can be mild thyrotoxicosis. The patient is usually elderly in case of toxic multinodular goiter, and it may present with the atrial fibrillation or the palpitation. So there can be atrial fibrillation, palpitations, tachycardia, nervousness, tremors, and weight loss. All these are the symptoms of thyrotoxicosis that we have already discussed. So the clinical features of subclinical hyperthyroidism or mild thyrotoxicosis can be seen in the elderly people, and these are presenting with atrial fibrillation. So you can see atrial fibrillations or palpitations. There can be tachycardia with nervousness, tremors, and the weight loss. Next, we come to the diagnosis of the toxic multinodular goiter. The TSH level is usually low, and there is uncombined T4 level that may be normal or minimally increased. So TSH is low, T4 is slightly, can be normal, can be slightly increased. The T3 level is often elevated to a greater degree than T4. So T4 can be slightly increased, can be normal, but T3 is increased at a greater level. The thyroid scan will show heterogeneous spike and the multiple regions of increased and decreased uptake. So in the thyroid scan, we are going to see heterogeneous uptakes with the multiple regions of increased and decreased uptakes. The ultrasound imaging to assess the presence of discrete nodules. You can also do ultrasound imaging to assess the presence of discrete nodules corresponding to the areas of decreased uptake. So ultrasound can be done for imaging to assess the presence of discrete nodules. There are presence of discrete nodules. These are corresponding to the areas of decreased uptake, and FNA may be indicated. So for the diagnosis of toxic multinodular goiter, we can check for the TSH, T3, T4 levels. TSH is usually low. T3 is more as compared to the T4. Thyroid scan will show heterogeneous uptake of the multiple regions. Ultrasound imaging to assess the presence of discrete nodules, and FNA may be indicated. Fine needle aspiration may be indicated. Now, how to treat a case of the toxic multinodular goiter? For the treatment of the toxic multinodular goiter, we can give antithyroid drugs to normalize the thyroid function. So antithyroid drugs can be given to normalize the thyroid function. Radioiodine 131 is generally the treatment of choice, and the surgery will provide definitive treatment for the underlying thyrotoxicosis as well as the goiter. So in the treatment, we can give antithyroid drugs to normalize the thyroid function. Radioiodine, iodine 131 is generally the treatment of choice. Surgery will provide the definitive treatment to the underlying thyrotoxicosis as well as goiter. Antithyroid drugs, radioiodine, and surgery. 3 treatments can be given in such case. Now we come to the another condition, that is hyperfunctioning solitary nodule. Next variety is the hyperfunctioning solitary nodules. Hyperfunctioning solitary nodule can be seen with the toxic adenoma. As the name suggests, there is a single nodule that is present in the thyroid gland. With the hyperfunctioning means it is functioning more and producing more and more hormone. It can be seen with the toxic adenoma. Toxic adenoma, it is an autonomously functioning thyroid nodule. So there can be a single nodule that is solitary and it is hyperfunctioning. So there can be toxic adenoma with autonomously functioning thyroid nodule. The cause is the mutation that stimulate the TSHR signaling pathway. So the cause for the toxic adenoma is the mutation that will stimulate the TSHR signaling pathway. The clinical features of the hyperfunctioning solitary nodule will include, will consist of the thyrotoxicosis that is usually mild, and the disorder is suggested by subnormal TSH level. So in the hyperfunctioning solitary nodule, there will be thyrotoxicosis that is mild, and the disorders are suggested by a subnormal TSH level. The presence of thyroid nodule, which is generally large enough to be palpable. There will be absence of clinical features that are suggestive of the Graves' disease or the other causes of thyrotoxicosis. So there will be hyperfunctioning thyroid nodule that is due to the toxic adenoma. It is autonomously functioning thyroid nodule, and the cause is mutation that stimulate the TSHR signaling pathway. The clinical features consist of the thyrotoxicosis that is usually mild, and the disorders is usually suggested by a subnormal TSH level. The presence of the thyroid nodule, which is generally large enough to be palpable, and there will be absence of clinical features that is suggestive of Graves' disease or the other causes of thyrotoxicosis. How to diagnose a case of hyperfunctioning solitary nodule? The diagnosis is done by the thyroid scan that provides a definitive diagnostic test. There will be demonstrating focal uptake in the hyperfunctioning nodule and diminished uptake in the remainder of the gland. So in the diagnosis and treatment, we can do the thyroid scan that will provide a definitive diagnostic test demonstrating the focal uptake in hyperfunctioning nodule and the diminished uptake of the remainder of the gland. The treatment of the hyperfunctioning solitary nodule consists of radioiodine ablation by iodine-131, antithyroid drugs and beta blockers that can normalize the thyroid function, and ultrasound-guided repeated ethanol injections and percutaneous radiofrequency thermal ablation to ablate the hyperfunctioning nodules. So we have a hyperfunctioning nodule. Its diagnosis can be done by thyroid scan, and the treatment is done by the radioiodine iodine-131 or antithyroid drugs or beta blockers, and with the ultrasound-guided repeated ethanol injections and percutaneous radiofrequency thermoablation to ablate the hyperfunctioning nodule. So this was all about today's lecture. We have discussed about the toxic multinodular goiter, and also we have discussed about the hyperfunctioning solitary nodule. In the next lecture, we will be discussing about the solitary nodules and different varieties. So this was all for today, and now it's your homework to go through the book and you have to consider all these topics. And also check my e-notes that I have uploaded on the portal and answer the question that I have given on the portal. So this was all for today. This session is powered by Digital Version 2.0, Jyoti Vidyapeeth Women's University. I hope the session is clear to you. If you have any query, please mention in the comment box and I'll try to resolve it. So this was all for today. Thank you very much. We will be meeting in the next lecture with thyroid solitary nodule. So this was all for today. Thank you very much. Have a good day.